Welcome to another episode of Breaking Into Cybersecurity, where we chronicle the stories of individuals who have broken into the field within the past couple years, and you're sharing their experiences as a role model for others looking to follow in their footsteps. Today, we have Frank P., who is joining us as a former Leo, if I remember correctly, law enforcement officer who I've been following his transition over the past couple of years, and I'm proud that he finally got here because we've been he's been part of the whole Cyberhuman initiative, and we've been helping him with his transition, and he's finally here. So first of all, congratulations for getting here,
Thank you.
Frank, and tell us about yourself first. What's your background, and then why were you interested in coming to tech and cyber?
Okay. Yeah, like you mentioned, I was a police officer for 16 years. Kind of did a little bit of everything from uniform and patrol, which is kind of what everybody thinks of as a police officer. I did that. Then I moved into the violent crime section and did a lot of undercover work, mixture of undercover and uniform work, buying drugs, controlling confidential informants, things like that. And that was kind of rough on the family. So I moved into investigations and worked in investigations for about just shy of 10 years. Anything from robberies, burglaries, auto thefts, scrap metal, you name it, I kind of investigated it. And I'd kind of always been, I guess, a quote unquote tech nerd. Even from a kid, I always was taking things apart, trying to figure out, but never thought that I could turn it into a career. I loved my law enforcement career. Unfortunately, I've had 2 shoulder surgeries, 2 hip surgeries. My body didn't love it anymore. So I knew it was time to start looking, but I had no idea what to do. Luckily, I had a good friend that was literally just transitioning from law enforcement also into cybersecurity as a SOC analyst. And I'm like, wait a second, I can do that. So I started going to get my associate's degree and really started working with whole cyber.
Well,
And
before you jump into that, let's kind of dissect the things you did in law enforcement that would align with what you wanted to do in cybersecurity, because I think for all the Leos out there or all the military police out there, there's transferable skills that you could take from the role and bring into your new career. So let's talk about some of the things you did over your many years of service that relate to this field.
absolutely, I think one of the biggest things is that investigative background. Um, that's huge in cybersecurity, especially blue team SOC analyst. That's We're kind of doing the same thing. It's just a different way to go about it. In the investigative unit at the police department, I was investigating violent crimes, things like that. Now moving into a SOC analyst role, I'm investigating alerts, but that mindset is still the same. It's still searching for information. That's probably the one of the biggest things for me that I've found is when I first started and I just left law enforcement in uh, March of this year. Um, I may not have had some of the background, the tech background that other people had, but I had that investigative knowledge and that drive to find the who, what, when, and where, and why. And I think that is a hugely transferable skill.
And what were like, I'm guessing you had to investigate phone or impersonations or stalkings. Like from those, what were some of the cybercrime investigations that you might have done that now you can say, oh, I did that when I was a Leo and I know how to do that already.
You're right, especially with phones. I mean, that's just like with everyday people. I mean, criminals communicate with their phones, and a lot of that was getting search warrants for phones and really diving in to see what messages, what photos they had, where were the photos taken? Does that link up to, hey, wait a second, they're wearing the shoes that my victim had stolen from him at gunpoint? Things like that. That was huge. And you talk about kind of impersonation and everything, and it's a little different topic, but um, my time in violent crimes, a lot of what I did was social engineering. I was playing the role of someone purchasing drugs from a drug dealer. That was all social engineering, and that goes into now helping, even though I'm a SOC analyst, helping with the red team activities, helping them out because I've got that background. I'm comfortable calling a company XYZ and posing as someone that I'm not to get them to release credentials that maybe they shouldn't release.
Nice, nice. So you decided that you wanted to go into cybersecurity. What were some of the struggles you felt that you were up against as you decide to make this career transition?
I think one of the biggest things was um, not having any certifications and really trying to figure out how to translate the skills that I did have into the cybersecurity world. Like I said, it had the background in investigations, but it was putting that into a way that hiring managers would understand and not just look at me like, well, yeah, this guy was a police officer for 16 years, but that doesn't really help out what we need. And he doesn't have any certifications. When in reality, it's like networking with some people, really learned, hey, wait a second. I do have transferable skills. I have chain of custody stuff, which comes into digital forensics. I don't have necessarily the experience in that, but um, chain of custody is chain of custody. It's going to be the same no matter where you go. It might be, there might be some little niche things that you have to deal with, but I mean, being able to present stuff in court, things like that was huge, and just trying to take that from what I knew how to do and put that into, the quote unquote civilian world.
And you mentioned that you started going for your associates. So, as a Leo, did you have any degrees at the time?
I did not. I kind of, typical rebellious kid when I was younger. I had free tuition through a local university where I was at because my stepmom worked there. Um, wasn't really sure. I kind of bounced around from different majors to different majors, and then finally just kind of stopped going. So when I started the degree path, it was kind of a twofold thing. It was one, I knew my law enforcement career was coming to an end, and I wanted to do it for myself because I wanted to prove that, hey, yeah, I kind of messed around when I was younger, but I can do this. I can get a degree, and I'm proud to say that as of this year, I did graduate with my associate's degree. Thank you.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know some of the struggles are when transitioning is, do they have a degree? Do they have certifications? And sometimes even an associate's degree becomes questionable because the organization sets the degree requirement at a bachelor's. Did you run into any of that when you were interviewing or doing your transition?
I did quite a few times. Quite a few times it was, you kind of get the thanks, but no thanks. You don't meet our qualifications. Other times there were, I guess, recruiters that would reach out to me, and the way I do was in my law enforcement career is the way I am in, quote unquote civilian life is I'm not gonna try to act like I'm something that I'm not. So I would tell recruiters flat out that, hey, listen, I don't know that I have the technical experience that you're looking for. I am completing stuff, I'm working on things, but and I can remember one instance very clearly. The recruiter was like, "Oh no, you're perfect. You're exactly what we're looking for," and then they never called me back. And I'm like, I told you that I wasn't what you were looking for, but
Well, I think sometimes that's a little bit of that imposter syndrome that kicks in. I mean, like you mentioned, you have the transferable skills. You at this point you are a cybersecurity professional. You just don't have it in the different ways that they might be looking for, like you mentioned. But I think it's important for individuals to both be honest with themselves as to where they are, but don't don't vote themselves down either. And you mentioned that you were part of the whole Cyberhuman initiative, and Paul Cummings is part of that organization as well. And from time to time, I'll have to remind him as well. I'm like, don't vote yourself down, dude. You have lots of skills. So tell us about your journey there with the whole Cyberhuman initiative and how that helped you.
honestly, I mean, I owe it to whole cyber and Paul for where I'm at. I would have never gotten the position that I'm in without him. And it's kind of a funny story. I connected with him through another friend of mine that, like I said, was transitioning also. And we spoke a couple times. Liked what he was doing at the whole cyber human initiative, so I jumped in. And really enjoyed the pathway of what I've completed so far. And like I said, I credit Paul to me where I'm at, because it was all him seeing a LinkedIn post from a former law enforcement officer. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, you might want to talk to this guy and read his story about how he transitioned." And the rest is history. Here I am now, like you said, a cybersecurity professional. And without Paul initially making that post saying, "Hey, check this guy out," I wouldn't have this position. I wouldn't have even known about the position that I'm in. Hey, Nick.
We have Nick commenting on YouTube. Nick, thanks for joining us. Yeah, Frank's on, sharing his story, and Nick's another individual that's helping out with the whole Cyberhuman initiative. And tell us about, like, what was the process like to go through that? Because I know we set up an assessment in the beginning. How did that assessment that you did help you find what you were looking to do?
I think it was huge. I knew that my background fit, kind of digital forensics type of pathway. But being able to complete the assessment, it kind of showed me, okay, yeah, your background may be in this, but what are you really interested in? Are you more interested in digital forensics, or are you looking to go more red team? I think red team activities are awesome. I'm still young in my career. Will I be red team one day? Maybe. I don't know. I'm enjoying the blue team stuff. I think that fits my background. And like I said, it wasn't like I left law enforcement because I just don't like doing this anymore. It was more of a physical thing, and there's a lot of other stuff that goes in with that too. But I can't. Completing the assessment, like I said, really lets you know, what are you interested in, what do you like, and where do your skills fit. That way you can kind of match all of that up together, and not just, oh, well, I've got a background in investigation, so I have to go blue team. Well, maybe you will, maybe you won't.
And then from there, like, what sort of training did you complete to help complete your path, and what did you or did you not like about the approach that was used?
I think one of the biggest things with the approach is the free resources. It's not one of these, pay $10,000 for this 4-week course and we guarantee you're going to pass this certification. And I've heard you talk about it before. Certifications are great. I would never knock a certification, but you have to pursue it for the right reason. You have to pursue it for the knowledge and not just the paper. Where with the whole cyber pathway, I feel like I can pursue the knowledge and not be stressed or worried about, oh, I have to pass this 2-hour multiple choice test to get this piece of paper that hiring managers want. I can really focus on learning what I need to learn and then putting that into what I do. How can I transition what I'm learning into what I'm going to need for my job? Like a perfect example is, like the MITRE attack stuff. How can I learn that and then now utilize that as a skill set for my career?
Wow, yeah, those are some great examples. And which of the areas of the studying that you had to do, of the resources that you were provided, you feel clicked the most with you, and were there any that you struggled with?
Um, some of the more industrial stuff was kind of dry, and it was kind of like, I definitely don't think I want to go into this area.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed the MITRE attack stuff. That was really interesting, and I learned a lot about different things on MITRE's website that I didn't even know existed. I knew what MITRE attack was. I knew it was there. I knew they had a site, but there were different things on there. I'm like, I didn't know they had that accessible for me to look at.
Yeah, there's a lot of hidden gems there. Paul shouts out and says, "How do you feel to be a candidate hired with only completing 50% of the pipeline?"
It feels unbelievable. And like I said before, I think you hopped on, Paul. I owe it all to you, honestly, for making that LinkedIn post about, hey, you might want to check out this former law enforcement officer's story and how he moved from a very high-ranking position as an assistant police chief into the cybersecurity world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we didn't mention yet about the whole Cyberhuman initiative is the whole community that's behind it. There's a whole Discord channel that's there to provide support and guidance. And then for individuals that complete the whole pipeline, myself, Paul, Leah, we offer coaching and mentorship to help them with their digital branding, their interview skills. Frank obviously didn't need that; he's crushing it. But just kind of highlighting that for folks that are interested. But back to you, Frank. When it came to interviewing, what was it like interviewing for these roles, and how many roles did you apply for before you got this one, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, no, not at all. I probably applied for at least 20 to 30 roles. Only interviewed maybe 6 of those roles. It was tough. I can remember actually having a conversation with Paul before my last interview, um, where I actually got hired, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm interviewing with the CEO of this company. I was like, I don't know what to expect. Is this a culture fit? Is he going to grill me on questions? I don't know what to do. I've never made it this far. And it was great talking to Paul and another one of the whole cyber candidates, Jeff Fields. It really put me at ease about what to prepare for and what to know. But interviews were tough, and I think one of the tough things too is a virtual interview. You I love, and I work remotely. I love working remotely. I couldn't imagine having to go into an office to work. But on an interview, you do lose some of that way to make a connection, and that can make it tough. But it was really like I said, one of the biggest things was Jeremiah Parker, working with him and really got to show me, hey, these are the skill sets that you have. You need to bring those up during the interviews. Because every interview you always get time to talk about yourself, and it's not just the whole technical aspect. And there is technical aspect, um, but being able to bring up those points of what was in my background, what I have done, I think that was huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those things that you do to build rapport in person may not be there virtually, but you can still do some of the same research to find out who you're interviewing with, maybe if you have subjects in common, and finding that rapport there. But I tell you, Frank, inter or applying only 30 places, that's considerably low to some of the numbers I've heard before, where some people apply at hundreds of places. So it sounds like you narrowed down your scope to where you wanted to work at, or the types of jobs that you wanted to do before you even went on applying. Was that the case?
It was. I knew, and you see and hear it a lot, but I knew SOC analyst was a good role for me with my background, and I know that as a SOC analyst, that's a good, quote unquote entry level role for someone to transition or break into cybersecurity. I know there's a lot of people going for that role, so it's extremely competitive. Um, but if you do have a little bit of technical knowledge, you have a little bit of a background in, let's say you are a law enforcement, and you've got some investigative skills, I think that's a perfect role to get into.
And Paul asked if you could go back to before your last interview, what would you tell yourself going into it?
That's a good question. Just be confident if you don't know, and I strive by this with, even in my current role when I was in law enforcement. If you don't know, you don't know. Don't be afraid to say, "Hey, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I'll find out." I know I did that on my interviews with where I'm at now. There were a couple questions I'm like, honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. I'll look it up and I will find out the answer to the question. But don't be afraid to say you don't know. In cybersecurity, in law enforcement, you're never going to have all of the answers. That's what's great about roles like this, is having an amazing team that I work with. If I don't know something or something, hey, this just doesn't look right. Am I interpreting this data right? Yeah, you're right on track. That's how I interpret it too. That's huge, because don't be afraid to ask. And if you don't know, like I said, you don't know. Don't be afraid to say that you don't know.
So, in preparing yourself for the SOC analyst role, you mentioned some of the MITRE training, but what do you feel was like the most important training for you to fill any gaps that you felt that you had to prepare yourself for the SOC analyst role?
Probably one of the biggest things was just working with my good friend that was in a SOC analyst role at the time. Like I said, he had just left law enforcement, so kind of talking with him, like, hey, what do these things look like when an alert comes through? Now, granted, I know that's going to be different depending on what product you're using, whether you're using Splunk or Alien Vault or whatever it may be. But really working with him and kind of talking to him, like, what does this look like? What kind of alerts even generate for a given company? Oh, well, there's user creations as a prime example. Okay, well, if a user's created, um, you know, a prime example would be, do you have access? What do you have access to in that company, to be able to verify that user creation? So it was a lot of working with him, kind of seeing what he was going through, and just kind of honestly brushing up on some networking stuff, learning some about networking, which is not one of my strongest suits. But that, and kind of, like I said, talking to him and saying, hey, what type of alert would come through? And then looking at that with my law enforcement background. Okay, how would I investigate this if it was, a law enforcement crime? Okay, well, I would start at point A and move my way through this and see where that leads me. And that's kind of what I've been able to do with transitioning into the career.
Well, that's such a great point. I think oftentimes people overlook the informational interview or the what does a day in the life of style interview with people that are in the role, because you might find out that you love the role, or just sitting and looking at logs all day, you're like, nah, this isn't going to work for me. But here's a good question. Did networking and having the skills with Terry Griffin help expand your investigation background to help you build a 5-year plan?
I think it did. And I'm still working on what I want my 5-year plan to be. And I know it's going to probably change 100 times in those 5 years. Just because I'm so new and I'm trying to absorb so much information and all the information I can. I love being able to help our red team out with some of their stuff, like I mentioned before, the social engineering. So I like kind of getting that little bit of taste of there. And I think that's one of the great things about the company that I'm with, is that they really promote, what are you interested in? I know this is your role. Your role as a SOC analyst. This is your primary duties, but what do you have interested in? Do you want to help the red team out? Do you want to help the DFER team out? Are you looking more to move into management? If so, let's foster where you want to go. Do you want to stay blue team and eventually move up to a level 3? They're great about fostering that. And I see one of the comments from Paul about working with Ryan. And Ryan is unbelievably awesome. Ryan is probably one of my best friends, even though we've only met personally once. Everything's remote, but he is such a wealth of knowledge, and he has really shaped where I'm at right now with the company. And he's always my go-to. Hey, am I, like I said, am I looking at this right? Am I reading this correctly, or am I missing something? And he's great because he won't just say, yeah, you're missing something, this is what it is. It'll be, well, where else do you think this could lead you? And it's like, well, what about this? And he's like, that might be a path to look at. So he doesn't give you the answer, but he kind of nudges you in the right direction. That way you're learning and still accomplishing it on your own. Now, granted, if it's something, hey, this doesn't look right, and it's something really bad, yeah, now it's time for him to jump in all hands on deck and figure out what's going on.
So let's kind of take a step back. Put yourself in your 25-year-old shoes. What advice would you give yourself?
Don't go into law enforcement, go into to cybersecurity. No, I definitely would. I mean, that's kind of joking, kind of serious. But like I said, when I was younger, I never thought that you could make a career out of IT or cybersecurity. So I think that would have definitely been something I would have pursued in college a lot earlier. And I don't know where that would have led. Would I still become a police officer? Probably. I think that it's a perfect transition. And I love the skills that I've gained from law enforcement, but I definitely would have pursued IT or cybersecurity significantly earlier.
Wow. Well, Frank, thank you for coming on, sharing your journey, and making yourself a role model for others that are looking to do that transition themselves. Thank you all in the audience for joining us on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and for sharing your comments along the way. Frank's LinkedIn is in the show descriptions if you want to connect with him. If you're on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit that notification button, and after the fact, share us with your friends and family. We need diverse people coming into this field from all different backgrounds. We need different frames of mind, of thinking, of background to solve the complex problems of tomorrow. So all, thank you very much and have a great day.